I'm addressing you today to inform you about our presentation of the OLAF report for 2019. European Union money is your money, our money. The European Anti-Fraud Office OLAF makes sure every cent of it is put to good use. This film highlights OLAF's work and achievements tackling fraud, corruption, counterfeiting and smuggling across the Union. You will learn more about the latest fraud trends and how OLAF tackles them. Keeping pace with ever more sophisticated fraudsters is hard work. It relies heavily on the expertise and the networks OLAF has built up in this area. As the European Green Deal becomes a key part of the Union's recovery, OLAF's growing work in tackling environmental fraud is particularly timely. The world has recently changed almost beyond recognition, and the coronavirus pandemic poses the greatest challenge that Europe has faced in a generation. Our focus now is on ensuring we are all bound back together, economically, socially, and environmentally, as quickly as possible. The European Union's recovery plan will put Europe's funds to work like never before, helping our societies to get back on their feet and building Europe's resilience. Every last cent will be needed, and we must do everything we can do to protect European money, stepping up the fight against fraud. During the coronavirus pandemic, OLAF's work went far beyond protecting the taxpayer's wallet. It protected our personal health, stopping fraudsters, putting our lives at risk with fake face masks, fake sanitizers, fake test kits, and even fake corona vaccines. In June 2020, we introduced a new streamlined structure, allowing the office to work even more flexible and effectively. Once the new European Public Prosecutor's Office will have started to process cases, still more investigations and more cases will be brought against criminals across the Union. At the summit in July, European Union leaders sent a clear message to European citizens. The Union needs to rebuild after the pandemic, and we will make sure it has the financial firepower to create a safe, fair, and sustainable future. I can guarantee you that OLAF and its many partners at European and national level will continue to work tirelessly to tackle the counterfeiters and the fraudsters, helping us finally emerge fully from these difficult times. Thank you and enjoy the film.
Thank you, Commissioner Hahn, for your kind and motivating words. For the last 2 decades, the European Anti-Fraud Office, OLAF, has been working tirelessly to protect and defend the EU's financial interests. Our role is to make sure that every cent of EU money is spent where and how it is intended for the benefit of European citizens and businesses. Our investigators and analysts follow the money, track shipments, and identify fraudsters, counterfeiters, and smugglers who are trying to steal money from the European budget. Each year, investigations and operations are carried out by the European Anti-Fraud Office and have led to the recovery of millions of euros from fraudsters. 2019 was no exception. The 181 investigations completed by OLAF during the year led to 254 recommendations. These recommendations passed to the relevant national and EU authorities led to the recovery of more than 485 million euros from the EU budget. And the fight against fraudsters goes on. In 2019, we opened 223 new investigations, the result of which shall lead to future recommendations and recoveries. We will now share with you some of the highlights of OLAF's work in 2019, which covered in the annual report. This year, we have included a special focus on OLAF's work in tackling environment-related fraud, which is becoming an increasingly important part of our work as the EU dedicates more of its budget to the Green Deal. We will also look at some of the wider policy developments where OLAF played a role in 2019, including the creation of a new Commission anti-fraud strategy, the preparation for the new European Public Prosecutor's Office, and the revision of the regulation governing OLAF's work. But let's start with a look at some of the investigations concerning the spending of EU funds completed by OLAF in 2019. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you, Ville. In 2019, the EU spent around 148 billion euro on a wide variety of projects and programs, covering many policy areas such as agriculture and regional development, migration and development aid, and research and innovation. The vast majority of this funding is spent correctly and effectively for the benefit of European citizens, businesses, and our environment. Unfortunately, however, the funding also attracts criminals, and some of the money finds its way into the pockets of fraudsters. This is where the European Anti-Fraud Office, OLAF, comes in. A number of cases concluded by OLAF in 2019 highlight the length to which fraudsters will go to try to steal European taxpayers' money. Given the size of the budget allocated to structural funds, it is perhaps no surprise that OLAF investigated a number of cases concerning projects in this area. One case in particular, concerning money from the European Regional Development Fund, shows how the procurement and tendering process can be abused and manipulated by fraudsters to siphon off money. OLAF carried out 4 interconnected investigations that unveiled a complex web of fraudulent commercial relationships between companies working in the textile industry. OLAF discovered that the companies colluded in order to purchase knitting machines at substantially inflated prices, and that the entire procurement process was undermined from the outset. The 4 EU co-funded projects were all implemented in the same illegal manner, but each of the projects used a different method to pocket the money. For example, 2 companies involved in the fraud agreed to buy and sell 7 new knitting machines. The invoiced cost of the machines was 325,000 euro, while the actual price paid was much lower than this market price, allowing the companies concerned to illegally pocket the difference. In a different variation, one company agreed to buy worthless second-hand machines at inflated prices from the seller company and then either sold them for minimal prices or sent them straight to scrap. OLAF completed all 4 investigations by making financial recommendations to recover 3.3 million in EU funding. In 2019, the people involved in the fraudulent schemes admitted their guilt and were sentenced to 16 months in prison. Protecting EU expenditure is only part of OLAF's work, however. Over to Ernesto for more details on how OLAF works to protect EU revenues as well.
Thank you, Margareta. When goods arrive into the EU from other parts of the world, their value must be declared at the border and they're subject to customs duties and, of course, to VAT. Evading customs duties and VAT by making false declaration is a form of fraud that OLAF is often confronted with. In 2019, OLAF identified losses worth 250 million euro through an already known organized fraud scheme concerning the undervaluation of textiles and footwear imported from China. These fraudsters are clever and they're adaptable, and they continue to move their fraud scheme from one member state to the other. OLAF has calculated that the total losses that Europe has suffered as a consequence of this fraud scheme has reached 2.75 billion euro in customs duties, with connected VAT losses estimated to be around twice as much. OLAF is working hard with the customs of all member states to put an end to this fraud. Then we have counterfeiting. Counterfeiters try to place fake products on the European market in order to make money, and they care little about the consequences that their substandard products may have on human health and safety or on the environment. Counterfeiters operate across borders to hide their tracks, and they're very hard to detect and stop for any national authority acting by itself. OLAF works across national borders, and we team up with the national customs and police to prevent these products from arriving in Europe. One important case in 2019 was about counterfeit bearings, which could have posed serious safety risks to all of us. Bearings are simple yet essential mechanical parts that are fundamental for the machine industry, from cars and planes to electric generators and everyday household appliances such as fridges, vacuum cleaners and washing machines. Counterfeit bearings can be faulty. Imagine that you're driving your car on the motorway and suddenly you're not able to control your wheels properly. The demand for bearings is so huge that there is always a space for counterfeiters to operate, also on e-commerce platforms. The problem is that counterfeit bearings do not move in large quantities and are very hard to detect at the border without early warnings. In this case, OLAF monitored the movements of bearings from suspect exporters located in Asia and was able to tip off in real time the customs of the member states where the bearings were arriving. Based on the information provided by OLAF, over 6 tons of counterfeit bearings were seized in 10 member states. Smuggling also has a major impact on the EU budget. Tobacco, especially cigarettes, is a rather classic line of business for smugglers. Recently, OLAF has been focusing on the smuggling of one particular product, water pipe tobacco. In 2019, OLAF uncovered that a remarkable number of consignments had entered Europe in transit from the United Arab Emirates, with declared final destination in another country outside Europe. This is already strange itself. These consignments were stored in a locked warehouse, waiting to go to their final destination, where we started to see declarations that the owner was ordering the destruction of some of these consignments. As this behavior is really unusual, OLAF decided to examine one of the consignments and discovered that 85,000 kilos of counterfeit water pipe tobacco were actually being stored in the warehouse. So the tobacco was not really being destroyed, it was being sold in Europe at great profit. Roughly 1 kilo of water pipe tobacco costs €20 at import and sells to the final consumer for over €100. The difference in price is due to customs duties, import taxes and VAT. And of course, if you evade these duties and taxes, you just pocket the money. Other connected investigations to this one discovered a further 9,000 kilo of fake water pipe tobacco in the EU and 15,000 kilo in a third country, all of it from the same source. The revenue loss related to this case was estimated at almost €14 million. But smuggling does not only involve tobacco. OLAF has also been working on reconstructing the routes used by smugglers of plastic waste and on the smuggling of endangered plant and animal species. These are all cases in which smugglers make money by damaging the environment. In 2019, for example, OLAF joined forces with customs and police and with Europol to fight against the illegal trade in European glass eels. Glass eels are baby eels, a prized delicacy in the Far East that can sell for up to €4,000 per kilo. Eels are a protected species and risk disappearing altogether from our rivers, especially if baby eels are fished to be eaten. In recent years, organized crime groups have smuggled millions of glass eels out of the EU to Asia. Let's now go back to Margareta for the focus chapter of our report with more detail of OLAF's work in tackling environmental fraud.
Thank you, Ernesto. Projects designed to encourage the sustainable use of precious natural resources frequently benefit from EU funding. Water management projects are particularly common, but one complex cross-border case investigated by OLAF was more concerned with using the project for laundering money than providing sustainable water supplies to the local community. The project saw a Romanian company win the tender to develop a water and wastewater management system despite having no experience or expertise in this field. The firm had falsified documents to pretend it had worked extensively on such projects in the past and created a fictitious joint venture with an experienced German company to back up its claims. Having successfully convinced the local authorities in Romania, that were the beneficiary of the EU funding, that the company had the capacity and experience to manage the contract, and having received large amounts of the funding in advance, the company simply abandoned the works. The contracts for both the water and wastewater plants had to be cancelled by the local authorities, delaying as a result the much-needed environmental improvements that they would bring. OLAF's analysis of the financial flows related to the EU money given to the Romanian company revealed that the intention had always been to use the project to launder money. OLAF was able to provide Romanian prosecutors with additional information to support their criminal case against the perpetrators of the fraud and the money laundering, and recommended the recovery of more than €6 million in EU funds. Now, Beatrice will introduce OLAF's role in the wider world of anti-fraud policy and its work with other institutions and bodies throughout 2019.
Thank you, Margarete. OLAF plays a vitally important role in detecting and investigating fraud against EU funds. But when it comes to judicial follow-up of these investigations, OLAF has to rely on the authorities in each member state, and the results can be mixed. If we look at the overall level of indictment following OLAF's recommendations, the rate is around 36% across the whole of the European Union, and there is clearly some room for improvement here. There are a number of reasons why OLAF's recommendations are not always followed up at the national level. Anything from OLAF's evidence being inadmissible in certain national judicial systems to the lesser important given to fraud involving EU funding in certain others. Whatever the reason for the lack of follow-up, OLAF continues to work hard to address this issue. One key way in which we do this is to improve cooperation and coordination with national anti-fraud and other authorities such as Eurojust and Europol, and to involve them far earlier in our investigations. For example, this makes it far less likely that OLAF's investigation will have to be repeated at the national levels in order to gather evidence that is admissible in court. The new European Public Prosecutor's Office, which will be up and running soon, will be a real game changer in this regard, with its right not only to investigate cross-border fraud against EU interests, but also to follow up investigations with prosecutions. Throughout 2019, negotiations continued to advance on proposals to update the OLAF regulation, the legal basis for the office's work. The revision is intended, above all, to ensure that OLAF is equipped to work closely with the EPPO to detect and investigate fraud across the European Union. 2019 also saw the adoption of a new Commission anti-fraud strategy, which focused in particular on strengthening the strategic analysis of fraud data and corporate oversight of fraud risk management by Commission services and executive agencies. OLAF will act as the linchpin for both of these priorities. OLAF also has a unique role when it comes to working with other Commission services and European institutions, a mandate to carry out internal investigations for the purpose of fighting fraud, corruption, and any other illegal activity. Each year, OLAF investigates a number of cases involving EU staff. There were 28 concluded in 2019. Failure to correctly declare expenditure was one particular trend detected during the year.
For example, one MEP allegedly contracted his partner as his assistant, who also provided services to the MEP through a company she owned. OLAF's investigation established that the assistant had never provided any relevant services to him, either directly or through the company. OLAF recommended to the Parliament that it recover more than €200,000 from the MEP and his partner, and that disciplinary proceedings should be initiated.
Another case concluded in 2019, this time concerning a member of the European Economic and Social Committee, focused on inconsistent travel declarations. The member had submitted forged e-tickets for his travel, declaring air travel in business class, when in fact the travel had been with low-cost airlines in economy class. The member was also found to have falsified information about overnight stays and his declared place of residence in order to increase his allowances. The total amount of unjustified payments was around €91,000. The member paid back the amount, but OLAF also recommended that disciplinary proceedings be taken against the member.
Although these cases concern only a tiny fraction of the thousands of individuals employed by the EU, any case involving public servants defrauding the system that employs them is one case too many. OLAF will continue to play its part in making sure the European Union public servants adhere to the highest standards of integrity and professionalism and protect the reputation of the EU institutions. And now, Ville, how will you wrap up our 2019?
Thank you, Beatrice. 2019 was a year of reflection on how OLAF could and should face the start of its third decade to ensure we can act in a more agile manner to better meet the challenges of the future. After many months of discussion and debate, June 2020, the new OLAF was born with a new internal structure and renewed focus on collaboration and cooperation. Cooperation with other institutions and organizations has always been at the heart of what we do at OLAF. It's imperative for our work. We need fast and reliable access to the right data in order to analyze it and to exploit it, not only during our investigations or operations, but also with a view on improving long-term strategic policymaking. Do I want OLAF to work as a center of knowledge against fraud and to assist with the investigations? Yes, but I also want to strengthen our fraud prevention and analysis work to detect and share our knowledge of gaps in the law and in administrative practices. It's always difficult to predict what the future will bring, and now more than ever. But whatever the future has in store, OLAF will continue to play its unique and imperative role in helping to keep the EU safe, healthy and fit for the future.